Welcome to This Week in Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another This Week in Coworking weekly recap. I am your host, Hector Kolonas, and this week I am joined by the formidable, always friendly, and always geeky Mike Everts. Mike, how are you?
Hey, Hector, thanks so much for having me on today. I'm doing great this morning.
Great to have you here. Before we introduce you to everyone who maybe hasn't met you, this week's episode, we're going to dive into a range of different topics. If you're listening for the first time or you're listening at home, pull up thisweekincoworking.com, hit week 46, and you can get more information, the summaries, and the direct sources for each of the topics we're going to dig into. So what is coming up on today's episode? We're going to dig into a little bit about some of Yardi Qube's news. We're going to jump into some news around a brand called Qube. We're going to dig into some things that the hotels are doing great. And then we're going to also touch on some tech stuff. But before we dive into that, Mike, tell us a little bit more about you for the people who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you just yet.
My name is Michael Everts. I'm based out of Atlanta. I actually have an interesting story on the co-working and operations side. I started out as an operator back in 2016 in Atlanta with a brand called Qube Space. We grew to 3 locations and a couple hundred members, and eventually I switched side to the software and vendor side of the house. So I have tried and outgrown a lot of different pieces of co-working tech. And as Hector said, I'm a bit of a co-working nerd. I love to dive into it, dissect it, and really understand how it works in the spaces. Today, I'm a senior team lead at Yardi, which means I manage the marketing for Yardi Qube and some of our other co-working products, really helping operators to scale and to build better member experiences.
That's awesome. And you've sat at many of the seats around the table. I don't like to say
Mhm.
jumping between sides because I think we're
Yep.
all in this to grow the pie
Yep.
for everyone, right? So, Mike, you guys at Yardi sponsored this week's newsletter. That means you sponsored the newsletter, the LinkedIn recap, you're sponsoring this podcast. But what that sponsorship means is you help us make it freely available for people all around the world to learn from each other, to get engaged with the content, and just to learn from what's happening across the co-working world. As part of that, you started telling folks about the changes you're making at Prospect Portal. Before we dive into what the changes are, what is this product?
Yeah, so the Prospect Portal is Yardi's answer to the e-commerce engine that really powers the sales for your co-working space, helps sell all of your different products, whether it's meeting rooms, whether it's private offices, whether it's just day-to-day day passes. And it's really kind of your own white label storefront for selling those things. And it quickly takes a online buyer from the first click to the checkout really simply. Then as an operator on the back end, lets you quickly close that out through sending contracts. A couple different things that it includes, different views, like specifically for a multi-location operator, where they can really quickly see all the locations you might have in the city and highlight those to different people in different locations around the city. And then all of that is complemented as well with a deep Google Tag Manager integration and a HubSpot integration. So ultimately, you can track all of this e-commerce that you are doing from your website, and then all of that hands off into your marketing funnel and eventually into your sales and operations funnel. So yeah, ultimately, it's a e-commerce white label storefront that we've
Mhm.
recently built, and we've been rolling out to customers, and they've been really happy with the way that it's helped them increase their online sales.
Obviously, e-commerce is a huge topic for co-working spaces, right? A lot of companies are out there building their own brands, driving traffic to
Yep.
their own websites, doing the marketing spend. People who come directly to your brand and they want
Yep.
to book with you, this is basically a widget or something they can add onto their website, link to from their website, and allow those people to take bookings and transact, right? Is it for on-demand and kind of suites, or is it more just for the on-demand side of house?
Yeah, right now it is for on demand, though we have active plans to make this available for private offices and improve it for private office so you could complete that entire transaction online. You nailed it. I mean, really, it's about that customer journey and making sure that when they start on the website, they can very easily go into a branded portal to continue the checkout process. And it feels very seamless, like something you buy on Amazon. And that's really been the goal in the
Mhm.
industry over the past 5 to 10 years. That hasn't always been the case for a lot of operators. It's surprising how many operator websites I go to, and just the buying process, they make it hard. You got to fill out some old school form or like a contact us form that who knows when you're going to get responded to. And a lot of websites still have that.
Yes.
This was built to help a lot of those operators really just sell more. on that front. It does on demand, and in the future, it will do offices to kind of manage that whole cycle.
Great. Is anyone actively using this?
I know there are multiple brands that are using it. For example, I know Premier Workspaces is using it to
Mhm.
manage a lot of their e-commerce process.
Cool.
IQ Offices is using it up in Canada to manage their
Nice.
checkout processes. We have quite a few brands that have been using it and attaching it directly to their websites just to kind of enhance that flow.
Amazing. It's an absolute no-brainer. I did do a bit of a deep dive earlier this year into this shift where co-working spaces were exploring. Do they follow what the travel and the hotel and the restaurant industry is doing, moving
Yep.
away from kind of OTAs and booking platforms to owning that full relationship, that direct to consumer or direct to business transaction? So you did mention that there's a one of the features is that it's well integrated with other systems. What can you say to the folks who are like, Yardi Cube doesn't integrate with anything? Is that a myth or is that a misconception?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And we definitely tout ourselves as an all-in-one workspace platform. We do integrate with different things. We integrate with HubSpot. We do integrate with Google Calendar. We integrate with Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics to that point, and a couple other things. So there definitely are aspects that we will connect with, and we understand that those are parts that we might not cover traditionally at Yardi. So yeah, to answer that, we do integrate. And on our website, you can find many of those integrations that we connect with. But overall, I'd say with Qube, you definitely need a lot less integrations than you might need with some of our competitors that are very integration focused.
Yep.
Which we find can be difficult if you have a dozen different logins to a dozen different software tools that you or your community manager have to use. It can get really tough to manage all of that, keep it all synced up within one place. And that's one of the biggest things that we solve with Qube is that all-in-one experience. So it's one login to control and manage almost everything.
It's that whole juggle, right? A lot of folks going monolithic or modular, and there's benefits to both. It's not completely monolithic, it's not all behind a wall garden, but there is
Yeah.
pipes out. There is ways to get in and out of the castle. But you did mention something which I thought was pretty interesting. Because you are this all-in-one provider, if I'm an operator and I want to activate this e-commerce front end, what does it cost me? Like, is it a monthly fee? Is it a flat fee? Is it a commission? Is it a percentage on take? Like, how is it priced?
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest benefits of the Yardi Qube prospect portal is that there is no commissions. A lot of the other e-commerce engines that some of our competitors might offer or have, they take a commission off every single booking, and that's how they make their revenue. With the Yardi Qube prospect portal, it is directly built into your Yardi Qube subscription that you'll pay on a per location basis. So we don't charge anything additional outside of that per location pricing that we would charge for the prospect portal. Those commissions can really add up. If you're getting dozens of bookings a week, you are paying a percentage of those to some of those other e-commerce platforms. So we believe it's your booking, it's your revenue. We don't want to interfere with that. And I think that's one of the competitive differentiators about the prospect portal.
As something I keep hearing about sitting on the operator side, hearing their complaints and their questions around tech. That's always one that comes out. Is what is this going to cost me
Yeah,
long term? It's free, but it's going to cost me, or I pay a flat fee and it's all upsides, right? It all goes to the bottom line. So really interesting to
exactly.
hear that positioning.
Margins are already thin enough in many co-working products, and we don't want to make those any thinner. And so, yeah, no commissions for the prospect portal. We think that's huge for the product.
And who understands that better than someone who had to run and grow spaces, right? So
Yep.
great to kind of get that viewpoint. So you did mention this whole idea of being a great ecosystem of tools, but then also connecting to other systems. There was a piece in our newsletter this week really digging into the renewed, I think it's the third time renewed partnership between Toast and Uber Eats. For folks listening in, Toast is a POS system, the thing that you normally tap your phone on or your card on when you grab that $72 coffee at the airport or anywhere else. And Uber Eats is the company that obviously delivers food for a lot of folks. They've
Yep.
announced a third tier partnership where they're now really connecting the data between the systems. This is the story that caught your eye. What did you take away from this news?
Yeah, I thought this was very interesting. You can kind of say in the co-working world, Toast is the co-working management platform and Uber Eats is the aggregator or the marketplace. This is already starting to happen a little bit in some cases. Yardi is doing this with Yardi Qube and Coworking Cafe and Despask, another one of our companies, where we are starting to closer connect these, the operating system and the marketing platforms. The fact that this is happening in the food space and the food delivery space, I think is just a sign that this is the direction that things are heading in. I believe that the space management platform, Yardi Qube in this case, will become more of a marketing platform and driver in the future. It will help you set prices. It will help you understand what meeting rooms or products are getting clicked more, and having all of that in one place instead of 7 different browser tabs and different products, I think is going to become the norm and the expectation moving forward. And so the fact this is happening in other industries just shows that this is the direction that things will be going in. And this idea of closed loop where you're keeping this all within one system that you can control, I think will become the new default going forward. And
Mm.
again, instead of having 7 different tabs open with 7 different platforms that are trying to connect, I think that this is very, very exciting for that. And I think you'll see more and more of it in the co-working world.
Yeah, I see it day in, day out, whether it is a completely unified system or it is just a rethinking of the data strategy at a company,
Yeah.
right? How do you really position yourself so that every booking is making the business smarter? In the case of
Yep.
Toast and Uber Eats, every order is making your business smarter. Knowing the delivery times, knowing when you're peak, when you're not, being able to staff up, staff down, being able to handle all of this through so much more than dashboarding, right? Dashboarding is the next evolution in our industry. I know we can geek out about that for weeks together. I know we have in specific nightclubs underneath hotels. We'll get to that in a second. But dashboarding is like the next step. But what comes after that is the most exciting, right? How does those analytics
Yep.
start creating insights? How does it create campaigns? How does it create, you know, going back to your integrations with Google Tag Manager and your search engine optimization? How do those pieces plug together so you know what's working, what's not working, where to invest, where to pull back, where to pause? Seasonality, right? We're going into
Yep.
one of the most confusing seasons of the co-working world is November to December. Everyone is looking forward to December, but no one is making decisions until January 3rd.
At the start of the year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
It's
everyone
it's
comes for
dead throughout
tours.
December and it gets crazy in January. And yeah, you're completely right. I think that the dashboarding is the step, and then being able to make actionable moves and decisions based on that dashboard all within that same platform is where it's going to. And we've heard a lot about dynamic pricing. These dashboards can kind of help things like dynamic pricing, whether it's AI pricing or whatnot. In this Toast and Uber Eats partnership, dynamic pricing is a part of it. And I think, as you're already starting to see that come into our industry, it will become more the norm, just like hotel booking, just like airline booking.
Mhm.
People are starting to expect those experiences. Additionally, I think connecting a lot of these marketplaces to your operating system will help you better understand the ROI of some of these systems, especially if some of them are charging commissions. You say, oh, this person booked for $100. I only get 80 of those dollars because the rest goes to commission, versus this platform over here, like I get all of the money. You'll be able to better understand how much money you're
Yep.
making from each one, where it's coming from, when it's more cleanly integrated all together. And today it's not perfect. I know that a lot of different people are working on that, but I think that's something that we're
Yep.
aiming to do and improve with some of our aggregator purchases and our connections to
Mhm.
Yardi Cube.
Yeah, I completely agree there. And I think it is a really interesting one because it's not only the getting the 80 out of the 100, right? It's also the operational overhead of servicing that
Yeah,
request.
exactly.
The 5 emails, the follow-ups, the
Yeah,
checking the calendars,
you're
the
so right.
logging them into, and then okay, you sold it for 100, but the team cost was $300
Yeah.
to service that $80
Because you spend an
engagement. So
hour
you're
just trying to get them to the right place and
exactly.
in the right room and using the right tech. You're completely right.
And then, so yeah, you're losing money on booking. So like tracking all that, bringing it back into one place where you can actually
Yeah.
see dollar to dollar. If you take out all the operational overhead, what is actually making you money? What is losing you money? Like we've had clients who they were getting a ton of bookings, but they were losing money. And they were just like, we do not understand why. And it was just the operational overhead. There's this
Yep.
cost involved with servicing specific types of inquiries And it goes back to another whole topic that we talked about a lot on the podcast around kind of the broker side, where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, I've got a request for 60 people. Send me everything you have in this format, but make sure it's line spaced to 2 points.
I mean, some of those operational costs are very hidden. You
Yeah.
won't know them until, weeks later when you're like, man, I didn't even make money from that event or that booking. So no, you're completely right. It's a huge part of it.
And it's going to definitely come back to that dashboarding, that tracking, not only the revenue, but the effort that goes into generating that
Yep.
revenue, right? I think the number one guiding metric in co-working is revenue per staff member. That is how you really define how many people do you have working to create X revenue. And
Yep.
that is going to be the guiding principle and number, I think, moving into 2026. On the topic of Qube, we saw another story from another company called Qube, this time Qube Space, out in London.
Cube with a Q
With a
instead of with a
Q,
K.
yes, it's
Yeah.
not with a K. This is a fantastic, different type of co-working space. They don't even
Yeah.
call themselves a co-working space, they call themselves a members-only music studio or a
Like a
creator
club.
studio,
You're
like
seeing
a
this more and
club.
more.
Yes, yes, we are definitely seeing it more and more. We're seeing a lot of where it's co-warehousing spaces just for e-commerce, space just for creatives, space for Etsy sellers. I've
Therapy
seen two.
spaces we're seeing more
There,
and for therapists and whatnot. And it's so interesting.
it is fascinating, and then you get this really cool idea of how far can this go, right? I mean, I've seen co-working spaces for golfers, for paddle
Oh, wow.
players, for so
Yeah.
I've actually seen two co-working spaces that are just for OnlyFans creators, and I have questions.
Oh,
Now, on that topic, what I found most interesting about this news is they just raised a whole bunch of money. I think it was £6 million to get a flagship in central London, but also to expand. So they're looking for more landers, looking for more locations to bring this model elsewhere. What is most interesting about that news is who funded them. And it was actually a publicly listed co-working and flex space operator called
yeah.
Workspace Group. So really interesting to see not only this nichification, but this idea of multi-flag brands. I think this is something we're going to keep seeing. We're seeing it happening out with Vast. We're seeing it happen with a few others where they have different brands for different ICPs, and they're
Yep.
kind of bringing it into one network. You as a, you know, very talented musician. I don't know if I've just outed you now and
I wouldn't say
share.
very talented, but yeah, no, I mean, I shared with you earlier, I've never recorded anything in a studio, but I know if you wanted to go to like record an official studio space, it's hundreds or thousands of dollars. It's very expensive. It's a whole process. There's a contract process and whatnot. And what Qube with a Q is doing is it's a members club for music and content creators. So they have the facilities. You essentially get a membership and you get studio credits. And so you can go in and they have these beautifully designed studios where you go in and record music or record content. By having that kind of vertical integration with the co-working and the music industry, they have pricing power because they're a premium brand and there's not a lot of people doing that. So they can charge a good amount, but it's easy for the end user. And so in many cases, they're happy to pay that because it's quick to book a room or get those services. And it really, I think, builds brand loyalty by focusing on those specific ICPs, like you mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
being able to find a space that's really built for you, not just a generic co-working space, but a space that knows music and knows musicians and has that vibe. You're going to be so much more loyal. You're going to want to stay longer. You're going to want to bring your musician friends. I think this niching down makes it easier to find those like-minded people, whether it's
Yeah.
housing, finding other e-commerce drop shippers or whatnot, all that kind of stuff. These niche brands allow you to do that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's kind of a template for what Qube is doing for how other niches could build their brands around these specific verticals, whether it's like a ghost kitchens or, I mean, there's so many
Mhm.
different ones co-working related, but I think this model of short-term booking, short-term amenities, and a community, most importantly, a community
Yeah.
around that niche is what makes it so co-working adjacent, why this story was so interesting to me.
There was one more topic that caught our eye. What was the last topic that caught your attention?
The Hoxton and working from the post talking about kind of just building out co-working spaces in hotels. And for those of you that don't know, Working From is the co-working brand of another brand called the Hoxton. And they're, what would you call them? Are they hotels? Are they properties? They have a couple worldwide. I went to my
Yeah.
first in Chicago at GWA a couple of weeks ago and was absolutely blown away. You walk into this building, the lobby is this beautiful lounge with bars, and it's also a co-working space. They
Mhm.
have additional co-working floors. It is a hotel. And then on the roof, they have an amazing restaurant and a pool and this really nice curated experience. And then, of course, in the basement, they have a speakeasy
Of
nightclub. And
course.
so literally it's a building that has everything you want. And yeah, someone that works at one of the Hoxton was just talking about in this LinkedIn post and article, incorporating co-working spaces into
Mhm.
hotels and some of the benefits and the pitfalls and stuff. I thought it was a pretty interesting topic.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely caught my eye, not only because you and I were at that speakeasy, and just to give a little bit more context to the whole brand on brand on brand, Hoxton is actually part of a group called Ennismore. Ennismore is a property developer, and
Yep.
they are the ones who are very heavily focusing on creating these mixed use, community driven spaces.
Yeah.
Um, I was also blown away. I've been to a couple. This was like the first one I went to after hours. I won't say what time we went there, but it was pretty after hours, and it was great to kind of still see that vibe, right? You knew that there was a co-working space in the building. We did anyway. Didn't seem like anyone else did, but
It
but it
wouldn't be
was great to
apparent,
kind of
but
see.
during the day it was. And yeah, I was looking it up. It was Ian Miner who led the development of Working From. That was the one that I read that blog post from. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similarities in co-working spaces and hotels. You know, they both have people that come in and bring in reoccurring revenue. And I think that in his article, it said that co-working adds smooth seasonality, the reoccurring revenue from memberships and meeting rooms. You know, when you might have a slow season in a hotel, there's still people that need to work and are there.
Yeah.
So the blog post talked about keeping separate P&Ls for those businesses because they are fundamentally different
Mhm.
businesses, and also talked about how connecting the data between whether it's a hotel member or a club member or a co-working
Yeah.
member, making sure that you had clean data flow between them so that you could offer a lot of those amenities to them, whether through marketing or sales or whatnot. In a hotel and in a co-working space, a lot of the amenities are somewhat shared, whether it's
Yep.
meeting rooms, whether it's bars, whether it's a wellness center, like a lot of those things you're seeing in both co-working and hotels. And so I would not be surprised if you started to see more hotels adopt this kind of model similar to the Hoxton, where they start putting
Yeah.
real co-working spaces in their hotels. I mean, we've all been to a business center in a hotel and know how bad that experience always
Yep.
is. And I think that more and more of them are starting to wake up and say, hey, there's some synergy here if we think about it
Yep.
better. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw co-working brands in the future partner with hotels to kind of provide
Yeah.
that. We wouldn't call it a business center anymore, but provide that working experience,
Yeah.
because yeah, it's not good right now in most hotels.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
And there was an
that's my piece.
acquisition a couple of weeks ago, a story we linked to about an acquisition of a hotel. The name escapes me now, starts with an M. I visited the one here in New York. They have a membership tier where you can come in and work from their lobby and get
Oh
unlimited
wow.
drinks and coffee. And they just got acquired. Accor has also invested heavily into co-working brands. So it
Hmm.
is a shift that we're starting to see where it's no longer a nice to have. The business centers are not nice to have.
Yeah.
People don't even stop in at them. At the hotel I was actually staying at, the GWA, I went looking for the business center because I was like, okay, this is a conference specific hotel.
Yeah.
What is
Do they
it?
have one?
And they did, but like
Yeah.
we had to walk through cobwebs to get in, basically.
Yeah.
No
Oh, I'm
one has
sure.
used that. No one has ever been in there. It's a fascinating fact that no, a lot of hotels sleep on it, pun intended. And on the flip side, it's a huge revenue maker if
Yeah.
you do it right. A lot of people half-ass, and we're seeing this with the landlord side as well, is we kind of want to do co-working, but we're not fully
Yeah.
invested, or we don't want to partner up with someone who knows what they're doing. And you get stuck in that middle area where
And it's a
it's
bad
not
result
contributing
for
enough.
everybody. Yeah.
And that goes back to
Doesn't
what
add
Ian was
value to
saying
the
about,
building, doesn't add value for customers. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a bad result for
yeah.
everybody. So
And it goes back to what Ian was saying about the splitting of P&Ls, right? If you just think of it as a line item in a hotel, the margins are never going to be big enough for you to focus on
yeah.
it. But if you
Yep.
separate it out and think of it as a standalone entity that has to be invested in, marketed, and supported, that's a whole different way to approach it. Mike, it is always a pleasure geeking out with you. I am gonna let everyone get back to their week. We'll be back in your podcast feed next week. Mike, are you going to be around? Where can people connect with you over the next couple of months? Or are you going dark for the holidays?
No, no, no. I'll be around. You can always reach me at michael.everts@yardi.com if you want to talk about anything co-working related or not. I'm always happy to chat. And Hector, thank you so much for having me on today to talk about Prospect Portal and Yardi and all of these cool topics. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you in person at the next conference, whether that's Juicy or GWA or somewhere else.
As long as there's a speakeasy, I'll see you there, man.
Yeah, sounds good.
Take care.